Provincia with my good friend, Dr. Worster, and we are
Hey,
back on the Community Connection. And for this month, we've got a guru on guiding coalitions. Say that 5 times fast. A guru on guiding coalitions. His name is Bill Hall from Melbourne, Florida, and I am a huge fan of this fellow's work. And we've got him here today, Eric. And I'm going to let Bill introduce himself, and we're going to jump right into this book. Let's do it.
Well, I'm Bill Hall. I worked with Brevard Public Schools on the east coast of Florida. Brevard is home to Kennedy Space Center. I was a classroom teacher, assistant principal, all at the elementary level. The last half of my career, I was the director of educational leadership and professional development. So if you do the math on my experience, it was a total of 44 years with Brevard Public Schools.
fantastic.
That's awesome. I
Well
was
done.
3. I was 3, Bill, when you started.
Thanks a lot.
Yeah,
Oh,
man.
Nathaniel.
I do it. I bet you had some hell of field trips living that close to the space. Oh my gosh.
I grew up in Winter Park, which adjoins Orlando. And when Alan Shepard went up, we had a fire drill. Everybody went out and watched him go up. And I thought he was just going to go out in space and never come back.
Wow.
But I watched them all. You name the 7 and the shuttle program. We've seen everything. It's exciting now. They're launching rockets, sometimes multiple rockets a day.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's outstanding. That's outstanding. Well, so I work with Solution Tree, Bill, and I schools all across America. And oftentimes, as I'm working with our leaders, I'm working with our teachers and our teams, I tell them, you can't do the work of creating a culture of professional learning communities leader by yourself. You've got to be able to trade off a little bit of that leadership power with bringing that good quality guiding coalition to lead this work. And the big questions are, I already have a leadership team. Why do I need a guiding coalition? Who are the right people that we need to have on this team? How often should we meet? All of these questions. And I do my best, Bill, to show them that book, Powerful Guiding Coalitions, and we work through it together. So it's an honor to be here with you. And I think, Eric, you've got a good question to start us off, if you don't mind.
Sure. So like Nathaniel said, people wonder what the difference is between a leadership team and a guiding coalition. So for our listeners, can you tell us what is the difference between a leadership team and a guiding coalition?
Well, to start off, I got interested in the topic of guiding coalitions because as I worked around the country like you do in professional learning throughout the country on PLCs, I saw the term guiding coalition maybe in a sentence in a book, maybe in a paragraph. I know Ken and Tom in their book Starting a Movement, they had a whole chapter on it.
Yeah.
But I got interested in the topic of what is a guiding coalition and how is that different from a leadership team? Yeah. Because everything I read said you have to have a guiding coalition. And so that was the reason for writing the book and doing the research. In my book, I have a reproducible that delineates the difference between the two in areas like responsibilities, member selection, focus, decision-making, and so forth. So I've got a few notes on the difference. First of all, a traditional top-down hierarchical leadership team leads everything under the sun. If you look at I'm sorry.
Oh, yeah, I can imagine.
Yeah, and it could be parking lot pothole repair, location of the new mural of the school mascot, implementation of the new reading series, discipline in the commons area, yada, yada, yada. They lead everything. And if you look at a traditional leadership team agenda, PLC topics might be agenda item 17 out of 28 items. So
Guilty of that.
PLCs get lost in the agenda, in the noise of administrivia. What I read with regard to the focus of guiding coalitions came from John Kotter, but Kotter's publications were business oriented, and so I didn't recreate Cotter. I was just taking that second stage about creating a guiding coalition and expanding that and making it education friendly. And so that was the reason for the book. Guiding coalitions don't lead everything under the sun. They lead one thing, change.
Mm,
And I can't think of a more significant change in our profession than becoming a professional learning community.
mm,
So if you want to know if you're a guiding coalition or a leadership team, look at your agenda.
mm.
If it's got a number of unrelated topics and PLC processes and topics are embedded in there, you have to look for them, then that's a leadership team. A guiding coalition focuses on student learning and PLC processes.
Mm.
So you have to have both. You've got to have management, budget, scheduling, decision-making, and those types of things. But then you have to lead the learning through a guiding coalition.
You know what? That's so interesting. And Eric and I were chatting, Bill, before you came on, and we were reflecting when I was a principal and when Eric was a principal. And I said, dude, did you have a guiding coalition or did you talk about instruction? And Eric talked about potholes and mascots and parades,
which are very important things. Very important things because
Exactly.
you know,
They
have too many
are
potholes, cars can't get in, parents complain.
Yeah, you know, but I don't know. Like I probably when I started out, Bill, I thought that was important stuff because it's always important to somebody, you know. But I'm going to be honest with you, and Eric and I have some good frank conversations. As long as we're talking about potholes, we're not talking about pedagogy. And
Absolutely.
what is the core mission of our schools? It's not, I know that stuff is important, but if you're not ensuring all students are learning, what are we doing? Right? But that's a different mindset, and I get it. And Eric was a very successful principal. And so it's just an interesting dynamic, Bill. I'm just curious what your thoughts are about that.
Well, there's a question about why do we have both, or can't the leadership team do all of it?
Yep.
And you have to take care of both of those aspects of leadership.
Thank you, Bill.
Obviously the leading, the learning, but I'm not sure teachers need to be in the room for potholes and bus loop duty and that type of thing. Maybe potential teacher leaders if you want that voice in the room. But Mike Mattis shared with me. He did not have two distinct leadership team and a guiding coalition. His agenda was twofold. The first part of the agenda was PLC processes and topics, period.
Mm-hmm.
Then you drew a line, and then we did the nuts and bolts, everything else. So you can do it that way, or you can have two if your school, the dynamics at your school, the size of your school, depending on your teams, you could have a administrative heavy leadership team, and then you could have a teacher heavy guiding coalition.
Yeah.
So there's no right way to do it. There's just your way that best fits the needs for your school.
Yeah. Go ahead, Eric.
Yeah. So something I'm very interested in is teacher leadership. How do you find the right people to be part of either that guiding coalition or leadership team? What qualities are you looking for in that group?
Well, there's a section in my book on teacher leadership because in our district, we had very heavy teacher leadership programs because, again, I was waking up every day trying to find future assistant principals and district leaders.
Yep.
And so there's several ways to do it. Sometimes the right people are there on staff, and it's easy work. It's low-hanging fruit. I can think of some schools that if in selecting the right people, they do it through a PLC-based, PLC-focused employee interview process. So for teachers or for support personnel, for instructional support, through behavioral event or targeted selection interview process, they can filter the interview questions through the PLC process, focusing on things like collaboration, teamwork, culture building, and what experiences individuals have had for that.
Mm,
If not readily identifiable, of course, recruitment could help. When you're recruiting for other positions, recruitment within your school, mentoring, identifying those individuals that mentor us.
mm.
I'm sure your story is the same as mine. We were probably classroom teachers, and somebody came up to us and said, "You know what? You need to think about going into administration or leadership."
Yeah.
And if your experience was like mine, it was like, and I have this in my book. It was like, you got to be kidding!
Oh, yeah.
Not you,
No,
you
hell no. I'm not going to the
Yeah.
dark side.
not this guy. And and I share a little bit in the introduction of the book
Yeah.
on my leadership story. So it's any and all of those. And Mike Mattis, again, when he was at Pioneer Middle, some of the individuals, he couldn't move them onto his guiding coalition immediately. Sometimes it took 2 or 3 years
Mm,
because you just don't ask someone or tell someone you're not on the guiding coalition anymore and we're going to move somebody else to take your place. But
yeah.
you have to ease people in and ease them off, because unlike business, in business, we can just move an employee to another floor or another division, or in my book, I said we can move them to the office in Greenland, never
Mhm.
to see them again. In schools, if we remove someone off the guiding coalition or the leadership team, without finding them other opportunities and taking advantage of their expertise, we're going to have a mad employee
Yep.
in the building. And
Yeah.
so we have to handle it a little differently than maybe some other occupations.
Yeah.
Also offering teacher leadership opportunities within the school. And again, if your district can focus on teacher leadership, uh, we we um, we covered those bases through our formal leadership opportunities in our district.
Yeah. Eric, that's a really great question. And this is a question, Bill, that I get confronted with a lot from my leaders. And it goes specifically to what Eric was talking about. So it looks a little bit. So here's question one. All right, Nathaniel, we're going to have a guiding coalition. And but I need one person per my grade level to be on my guiding coalition, because I want to have a well-represented, staff on my guiding coalition. But Mr. Provincial, the problem is 4 of those people are toxic. And I know that the only reason why they're on this guiding coalition is because no one else wants to be on it. And I know if I bring them on, they're just going to just be resisting everything and just be just outlaws and everything that I do. Should I still have them on my guiding coalition? All right, Bill, there's your scenario. What are you going to do, man?
It's interesting. It depends. When I was doing the research for the book, I interviewed over 80 associates, experts in United States and Canada, and it depends on who you talk to. There are some very relation-oriented, nurturing leaders who are willing to take that toxic personality on because they can work with them and perhaps take some of the edge off of the toxicity. There are others that say absolutely not, hell no.
That's right.
You don't put them on there. Connor says there's 2 people that you definitely should not have on your guiding coalition. The first one is individuals who have egos so large that it fills up the room and there's no room for anybody else.
Mhm.
Then my question is, but what if the leader
Yes.
is the ego? Okay,
Yes,
that's
9
a
times out of
different
10,
discussion.
probably that's it.
Yeah. The second personality are snakes. And snakes are the ones that they spew their venom throughout the organization. They gossip, they talk behind people, behind their backs.
Yeah.
They're everywhere they go. It's just very toxic. So I have an example in the book of what if you have a teacher on your staff who's on the guiding coalition, and her husband is the chairman of the school board.
Mm-hmm.
She's a very toxic personality.
Oh, yeah.
What do you do? I mean, in the real world, what are you going to do?
Ooh, it's like keep your friends close, keep your enemies closer.
Exactly.
I don't know. Yeah.
Yeah. So I started thinking about, well, do you or don't you? I mean, it could be a career-ending decision in some cases.
Mm,
That's why we have team norms and collective commitments. Now,
that's
if
right.
that toxic teacher is on the guiding coalition and he or she helps develop and agrees to those team developed, team approved norms and collective commitments, they're signing on that these are the promises that we're making with staff. And now you have something that you can use to maybe work into that toxic element that
Yeah.
person's bringing to it. It just depends. There's not, and people want the right answer. Which one is right?
Sure,
It's,
sure.
well, it depends on your leadership style. It depends on the dynamics at your school. Um, uh, Most people that I talk to, though, if there's someone with a toxic personality, you need to avoid having them on the team.
Yeah, yeah.
But
I agree.
you need to help move that person off, respect them, treat them professionally, see what their strengths are. I had a teacher like that when I was in my first principalship,
Mhm.
and when I talked with her, I said and she was I was not I was an acquired taste to her because she was so loyal to the previous principal.
Sure.
In fact, they were good friends, and they went socially with the families, got together and that type of thing.
Mhm.
And so every time I would say one thing, she would remind me of what the other principal would do, and she would
Mhm.
spread that around. Well, during her evaluation after the first year, I brought her in and I said, every student in this school should have you, and she was shocked because we never had this conversation.
Mhm.
I said, you have 3 children, one's an attorney, one's a government official, and one's in the ministry.
Yeah,
And you are a model of great parenting, and you know what positive things you can bring out in children. And
Mm.
I tried to hit it from that side instead of focusing on the toxic piece, the personality piece.
yeah.
And after that, that did it for me. But that's just one way, is trying to work through it with relationships and nurturing and going slowly with it.
Yeah,
But
great
Bill,
answer.
that's a great. I appreciate your story, and I sometimes think as people become leaders, they think just because of their position, they
Right.
need to be respected. They don't think they ever have to show somebody that they'll acknowledge them. It's like, what have you done to turn that person away from that toxicity? How have you tried to meet them where they're at? How have you tried to give them a reason to respect you and appreciate your leadership?
Right.
So if you just go in with, well, I'm the principal or AP, and because of my position, you should respect me, give them a reason to believe in your leadership.
Yeah.
And that can change somebody who's labeled as toxic to a supporter. And I think that's one of the most important roles a leader has, because many of us don't start something. Many of us take over for someone else.
Exactly.
And it's very easy to complain or bemoan how somebody else did something. But to me, a good leader can convert that and have people follow in your leadership vision, as long as you respect the past. I tried as a principal to never think that I was the best or had all the answers. I always tried to go to my people
Right.
and look to their experience and knowledge, because I didn't. So I'll admit here on this video, I don't know everything, right? So I needed their expertise to succeed. I could not do it alone. And I needed those people who others might have viewed as toxic to give me honest feedback. I didn't want people who were just saying, "Oh, that's great, Eric, fantastic idea." I wanted them to say, "No, that's not a great idea. Here's why, and let's create something better."
And a
But if you
question
don't
we
invite
ask,
them,
yeah, and a question we ask is, how did that person get that way?
Oh, yeah.
Were they trying for leadership responsibilities in school,
yep,
and the previous administration turned them down?
yep,
We don't know the background story.
right,
Yeah. Oh,
And
absolutely.
you talk about having someone that you can depend on to tell you how it is. I've got that in the book too, A Courageous Follower.
Mm.
But I had a teacher, Marion Gasaway, 6th grade teacher, and we got along just great. She was a fabulous teacher. But when she showed up at my door and she had her hands on her hips, I knew to put whatever I was working on at the desk down and have her come in, close the door, and she said, I have a concern about this or that, or the grade level, or this is what's going on. And you have to respect that and take it as, if they're willing to come with that kind of feedback and that kind of information, they just want what's best for the school and what's best for everyone.
Yeah,
agreed.
So, Bill, let's say I really feel like this is something that I've noticed that I find very interesting. And I'm really curious what your opinion is on this. For me, no principal, no guiding coalition. If the principal's not in the room when that guiding coalition meets, meeting adjourned. We stop, waste of everybody's time. That's how I feel. And I've seen this. I've seen where we've got a great group of leaders. They can lead without me. They don't need me. I'm like, hold on. No principal in that room with the guiding coalition, meeting adjourned. That's me. Maybe I'm too hardcore, Bill. I don't know what your thoughts are.
Nope, I agree with you. If the principal's not in the room, it's not a guiding coalition.
Yeah, absolutely. And then the second thing is kind of like we talked a little bit about the agenda, and whether or not, if it's a small school, you may have everyone on the staff kind of like operating with that, and you might have to take care of the potholes. Then you got to get to talk about the PLC work. I know there's nothing set in stone with that agenda, but let's just look at a true guiding coalition PLC based agenda. I'm thinking that there's always connection to the vision and mission. There's always kind of like a affirmation about how well the school's doing with their collective commitments. I often think that everyone is kind of like sharing out their team's journey with the 4 critical questions, how the goal setting's going, how are we doing with our tier 1, tier 2, tier 3 based processes? Are there any roadblocks, obstacles that are in the way? Are we using our efforts to promulgate the goals that we have as a school? And then working to build any kind of consensus that we have at the table. To me, if we're talking about that kind of work systematically, perfect world weekly, maybe monthly, are we on the right track, Bill? Are we doing that, or are we missing something?
No, you've defined it very well, and it brings up a concern that I have in the schools that I've worked with. There's a couple of schools that they wanted to have their guiding coalition meetings once a month.
Mm-hmm.
And if we're asking teachers to work collaboratively once a week, then we need to be the model team. The guiding coalition needs to be the model team, that we don't say do as we say, not as we do.
Mm.
And so they need to carve that time out, especially at the beginning. I think it's essential that they meet. Otherwise, it gets cold. This one school that I worked with, they met once a month. Well, they spent an hour recapping what they agreed to in the previous meeting. And then they said, okay, and then the next meeting. And so they never got anything done. There was never any traction to move to building a culture. If I were to, there were a couple of examples in real world that I wanted to mention. The first one is Bartow County, Georgia, Philip school system. Their PLC playbook that's on their district website is an outstanding model of the timeline, the roadmap over 3, 5, 6 years. They are now a model PLC district in the country, and they have a lot of model PLC schools at every level, elementary, middle school, and high school, that individuals can contact. They even have a program set up where people who are interested in hearing their story and seeing the benefits of becoming a PLC, it's almost like a tour where you go get a 2 or 3 day training. It's all on their website.
That's
but I highly recommend them.
Bartow County,
Georgia.
Bartow, Bartow County, Georgia. Philip Page he's an associate, and it's that model of if the principal's not in the room, it's not a guiding coalition.
Right.
He knows more about PLCs and can articulate it as the superintendent of schools. It's a really great story. In our own district, I tracked 7 years of Florida Comprehensive Assessment Test data. And what I was finding was with PLC schools and model PLC schools, we had 27 model schools out of 85 schools. I tracked that data to see the achievement of the PLC schools and the model schools versus those that were not working as a professional learning community. Over the 7 years, the PLC schools and the model schools, their achievement remained the same or improved. And the other schools started to go down. In other words, over the 7-year period, the gap between the two types of schools widened over time.
Wow.
That's great data.
Powerful.
Did you see similar schools in that group? So were you comparing like the schools who remained constant and the schools who did not? Were there differences in the types of schools? Am I making sense of my question?
No, in fact, we had one school, Pinewood Elementary. It's the northernmost school. Our district's 75 miles long.
Yeah.
And Pinewood, they were 2.5 standard deviations above the mean. And it was a rural school, high needs, high free and reduced rate.
That's fantastic.
And whatever their story is, whatever their leadership team and guiding coalition were doing was something that other people could identify with and learn from if they contacted that principal and that team.
That is great data.
I love
reminds me of Minnieville.
It's a good school. It was a good school, man. Bill, man, we are out of time, but I could just like sit and just chat with you forever, my friend. I know it's a small world. I know our paths will cross very, very soon, my friend. And I got to get to Melbourne, Florida, man, because it sounds sunny and I suck at golf, but I like to play. It sounds like a place to play some golf.
Well, we're 50 minutes from the happiest place in the world. So.
Oh, okay. All right. That sounds good, brother. Bill, thank you so much for joining us on this community connection. We're gonna end it and just hang back for a little bit and we'll chat a little bit more, man. Take care.
Thank you.